Alive. Good morning and come on in. Welcome to the service of the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Grand Traverse. I'm Dave Newhouse. I'm a member of the Sunday Service Committee, the junior one, and of the vocal ensemble. Welcome to those who are joining us via live stream, as well as visiting with us here in our beautiful sanctuary. If you are visiting or are new, and if you're willing and able, would you please stand to introduce yourself, because Christine will bring you a mic and you can tell us all who's here. Nobody knew. Well, thank you. We invite you all to join us after the service in the social hall for refreshments and conversation. A yellow mug for the people who are new to us. You're someone we'd like to get to know, and we can find you with the yellow mug. Welcome all to this congregation of wide embrace. Sharing our joys and concerns with our beloved community helps us stay connected in moments of celebration and in times calling for compassionate support. We've been through that. For those of you in the sanctuary, the book for recording your joys and concerns is over on my right, your left, and you can light a candle, a votive candle, to commemorate someone special, now or during the centering music. Your joys and concerns, written down there and shared with Reverend Alex, will be read later in the service. Now, as we start the service this morning, we invite you to set aside the distractions of daily life. Please turn these things off so we can bring our full attention to this time together. Know that in this place, you are not alone. Know that in this place, responsibility is shared. Here, tradition holds us. Ancestors shine a light from the past. Here, the young lift up bright faces and beckon us onward. Take our hand. We can go on together. Today's service centers on Passover, which begins tomorrow evening, what Exodus means for earth justice. You may not have put those together before. You're probably familiar with the 10 plagues of Egypt, and Teresa will read those to us later, bring you up to date. But that culminated, the 10th and final plague was a mirror image of the Pharaoh's threat to reduce the growing Hebrew population by killing their firstborns in a back and forth, tit-for-tat series of retributions that is alive and well thousands of years later in the Middle East. To save themselves, the Israelites were instructed to slaughter a lamb, paint their doorposts with its blood, and then at night, the angel of death, and I picture that howling visage coming up in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, would pass over, therefore the name, would pass over the Israelites with their doors marked, killing only Egyptian firstborns. Now, perhaps biblical plagues can be explained as ecological domino effects of natural phenomena triggered by volcanoes or changes in climate or environmental disasters. But Earth Day reminds us about modern versions of the plagues that we're inflicting on ourselves unless we change our ways. Climate change, deforestation, water pollution, lead poisoning, habitat destruction, mountaintop removal, radiation poisoning, factory farms, overfishing, and acid rain. Will they all pass over us? Now Julie will share her centering music from Georg Friedrich Händel.
Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here with us this morning. I'm Reverend Alex, the senior minister here at UUCGT. I use he and him pronouns. And I invite you to settle in as we hear these opening words from the Reverend Dr. Deborah Hafner. We are on a journey. We didn't plan it. We didn't have time for the bread to rise. We may find ourselves in the wilderness, hungry, thirsty, doubting that we should have ever come. But look around. We are not alone. It is our journey together, a journey to our better selves, a journey to a better world, a journey to a more promised land. We are all bound together in this journey of our own planet Earth. May Passover give us lessons for that journey as we still hold hope in changing course and creating a sustainable and thriving world for ourselves and for future generations. And so come, let us worship together this morning.
We join together this day with loving hearts, hands, and minds, embracing the interconnected web of water, air, and earth. We light a fire of sustaining hope, ever bright with love and justice, to create a new world, not of wealth, but of well-being, a world of new peace and abundance for all. As we give thanks for this earth, our shared and only home, we dedicate ourselves to its ongoing care. Rising to the calls deep within us and all around us, may we respond today and always with courage and with love. And this Sunday, we also mark and honor the Lesbian Day of Visibility this Friday, the 26th. As we light this candle and take pride in this flag, may we continue to create brave spaces where we can bring our fullest selves to the table and know that we are seen and loved as we are. And now, we sound the singing bowl as we enter a time of worship, stillness, and contemplation. Now, if you'll turn to the 1058 in your 1068 in your teal hymnals, Anne Marie will lead us.
You would rise in body or spirit and join us in singing.
Thank Morning. If any of my younger friends aren't up here yet, you might want to come up here because there might be treats. All right, good morning. So, as you heard in our intro this morning, we are celebrating something called Passover this morning. And at Passover, we celebrate, or the Jewish people celebrate, the setting of their people free from enslavement and from being oppressed in Egypt. And so on that day, or during the time of Passover, they have a special meal called a Seder. And that is where they go through this big ritual and this big meal, and every single piece represents something of the story of Passover. So I have a piece this morning called the matzah. Has anybody ever had matzah before? Some of the grown-ups said yes. Have any of the kids had matzah before? All right, pass this around. Everybody take a piece. What does it look like? Bread. Does it look like regular bread, though? Crackers. Kind of looks like crackers, right? So you guys can eat it. Yep, go ahead. Grown-ups, we don't have anybody with gluten sensitivities, right? We're good? Okay, just making sure. Got a couple new kids, so just making sure. So it does kind of look like bread or like a cracker. It's crunchy. So how is it different than regular bread? It's bumpy. Alexandra? It's thin. What about the texture? When you bite into regular bread, does it crunch like that? No, it's hard, right? It's bumpy, it's flat. So when they were escaping from Egypt, they did not have time to make bread that was fluffy because that has to take time to rise. Have you ever made bread before? So when you put yeast in bread, it takes time and it has to rise and you have to wait and be patient, but they didn't have time. They had to be fast and they had to flee and escape. So they eat the matzah every year to remember that their people had to flee and that they had to be fast to get to freedom. And so the matzah is a big part of that story. So there's another piece, let's see. They're not chocolate chips, but they are a kind of a chip. We'll get to that in a second. So this is a whole piece of matzah. This is what the matzah normally looks like, right? Yes, Emma. May I have it? No, you may not have it. It was an excellent question, but no. I need one of you to be a volunteer for me. Clara, can you come up and help me? Yes. So we are going to do something that is a traditional part of the Seder meal. Clara, I'm going to ask you to take one side, and I'm going to take one side, and we are going to break this into two pieces. Oh, we broke it into three. That's okay. So this is the broken, thank you, that was all I needed. The broken matzah symbolizes the brokenness in our world, right? There are people that are oppressed. There are people that don't have enough food. Our planet is in danger. There is a lot of different things that make our world kind of broken, right? It's not a perfect world that we live in. But we, as human people, are trying to work together to build a more beautiful, less broken world. And so I'm going to ask one of our grown-up friends to help us. This is a tradition that they do during the Seder meal. They break it, and then this bigger piece they call the afikomen. And someone hides it, and then at the end of the meal, you find it. And then you bring the pieces back together to represent how we are trying to bring a broken world back into wholeness. So we are going to do that today. After our Sunday school time, after the service is over, we will come back in and we will find our afikomen, and we will bring the broken pieces back together.
And then eat it?
And then eat an even more delicious treat that we're going to make during Sunday school with more matzah.
Chocolate chips.
So Miss Mary is going to hide it for us. I don't know, she's pretty sneaky. She might hide it in a really tricky place. Miss Mary's going to hide it for us. And then we are going to come back after the service and find it. But now, as someone so helpfully pointed out, we have these. What are these? What do they look like? They look like chocolate chips. So pass them around. They do look like chocolate chips. They are not chocolate chips. They are carob chips. So carob is a fruit that grows in the Middle East. Do you guys know where chocolate normally grows? Normally South America. So South and Central America is where a lot of our chocolate is grown. This is grown on the other side of the world in the Middle East. It is a big tree. It looks kind of like a pine tree, and you can eat it. Does it smell like chocolate? Kind of taste like chocolate, but a little different, right? Kind of nuttier, a little bit different flavor than chocolate normally has. The fruit itself is normally sweeter, but I have a story this morning about a carob tree, and so I wanted you guys to get a chance to taste what carob tastes like. So this is a story from the Talmud, which is a book of stories that they use in the Jewish faith and the Jewish tradition. Thank you. Too many pages. Hold on. All right, so this is a story about a man named Honi. So a long time ago, there lived a man. He was a wise man named Honi. And one spring day, he was on a walk, and he noticed a very old man planting a carob tree. Honi asked, "Sir, excuse me, but how long does it take for this tree to bear fruit?" The man replied, "In about 70 years, this tree will produce carobs good enough for eating." "Do you think you will live 70 more years to be able to eat that carob fruit?" asked Honi. The man replied, "Oh, no, but I remember eating carob fruits as a young boy from trees planted by those who wanted to leave a gift for younger people. Just as my parents and my grandparents planted trees for me, so I will plant trees for my children and my grandchildren." Honi decided he needed to take a rest, and he slept, and as he slept, a rock formation surrounded him, and he slept for 70 years. He must have really needed a nap. When he awoke, Honi noticed a man picking carobs from a tree nearby and asked, "Did you plant this tree?" "No," answered the man. "My grandfather planted it 70 years ago." "I can't believe it," Honi said to himself. "I must have been sleeping for 70 years." The man said, "I am going to plant a carob tree also. See, I have a sapling all ready to plant. Someday, my children and my grandchildren will be able to enjoy carobs just as I do." Honi remembered the words of the old man. "Just as my parents and my grandparents planted trees for me, so do I plant trees for my children and my grandchildren." So just like the people planting the trees, it is our job, it is our grown-ups' job, it is our congregation's job to plant trees and to do things in our world for the next generation. So these grown-ups are doing things for all of you, us grown-ups, I'm one of them too, but we're all doing things for all of you, and you work together for the next generation, and generation after generation, we are working together to heal our world, all right? Do you guys want to go help me do some cooking for the grown-ups for later?
Yes.
Great, let's do it.
Please join me in singing the children's benediction. Go in joy, go in peace to meet the day. With open hearts embrace life's wonder. We will guide you, we will love you on your way.
Our stewardship touches those within and reaches those without these walls. Our offerings reflect commitment to UU principles, respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and pursuit of justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. Our offering today sustains and grows the life and mission of this congregation. We give in love, knowing that our contributions will be used mindfully. Now, the baskets that will be passed have two sides. The red side is for community needs, including safe harbor and local food pantries, and the blue side sustains this congregation. There are other ways in which you can give, and they're shown on the slides. You can mail a check to the congregation at our street address. You can give via the UUCGT website or the Venmo app. There are QR codes for your use. You can give through the Vanco mobile app, which can download onto your little device, or you can make arrangements with your bank, as we do, for regular transfers to UUCGT's account. You can designate your gift as you wish, for the congregation, for those in need, or for fulfilling your annual pledge.
It's now the time in our service to hold the joys and concerns in the life of our community, the milestones and moments that are really important to us that we know must be shared with others while we are gathered. I have a couple of these to offer that have been shared with me. If you have a joy or concern that's a bit too raw or tender on your heart, you're always invited to light a candle at any point, to reach out to a member of our congregational care team or myself, or to simply just hold it on your heart as you are held in the love of this community. None of us is ever meant to travel life's journey alone. So if you would please join me in holding these on your hearts. From Heather Shoemaker, a joy. Luke's choir, choral airs from West High School, is going to all state. Thrilling to hear music at such high caliber, and you're all invited to their next concert. And Heather, would you share with us possibly when that is? Oh, there you are. May 1st. Well, perfect. So you're all invited. Congratulations. From Emilu Cholak. Passover is the time of gratefulness and gratitude as we celebrate our escape from slavery. The angel of death passed over the ancient Jewish homes and spared their eldest sons. The rest of the road to freedom was up to them as they escaped with God's guidance. Today we can hear that shouting for freedom from those still imprisoned, those with fear of annihilation, with fear of loss of home, homeland, family, food, way of life, and so much more. We can hear the screams from many oppressed peoples around the world. Before we sit down to eat our Passover meal together, we invite those who are hungry to come and join us. And so today, in the spirit of gratefulness and opportunity, we open our hearts to all those in need and offer our help in as many ways as possible. In this way, we can better enjoy our own gifts of peace and gratitude by sharing it with the many in need. We think of the embattled Gazans, fearful and bombarded Palestinians and Israelis, the exhausted Ukrainians, the Sudanese, Yemenis, and many, many more caught in the throes of war and famine. As we consider our own gifts of peace and freedom with gratitude, we continue to remember those who remain in bondage and pray and work for their freedom. Thank you for those words, Amilu. And now let us hold a space for the joys and concerns that remain on our hearts. And in this space, I invite you to join me in holding these words by Stuart Weil Tall, and this is from an Earth Justice Seder for Passover. One of Passover's lessons is learned to distinguish between more and enough. Dayenu means it would have been enough for us. Often enjoying more wealth and comfort stimulates our desire for more. More attention, more comforts, more money, more, and more. Passover teaches us to be mindful of what our real needs are, of what constitutes enough. What constitutes enough for you? What material objects or consumptive activities could you do without? For example, if we had enough clothes for comfort and we didn't have such full closets, dayenu. If we ate meat only on special occasions and we ate vegetarian most of the time, dayenu. If we biked or walked to our daily destinations and we didn't own private automobiles, dayenu. If we purchased from bulk containers and we didn't have disposable packaging, dayenu. If our stuff was built to last and we rarely threw anything away, dayenu. In this short space for silence, see if you might add your own item or two that you might do without for a better, greener world. What would be enough for you? And what could you do without? And I say, dayenu. Amen. Let us now join in singing our hymn of response, Spirit of Life.
A reading is from the Hebrew Bible, from the book of Exodus, on the 10 plagues of Egypt. As you hear about these plagues, think about their relationships to ecology and the earth. Then the Lord said, "The water in the Nile shall be turned to blood." Moses lifted the staff and struck the water in the Nile. All the water was turned into blood, and the fish in the river died. But the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts. So Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he would not listen. Then the Lord said, "The Nile shall swarm with frogs." The frogs came up and covered the land. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts. They gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he hardened his heart and would not listen. Then the Lord said, "The dust of the earth will become gnats, flies, and locusts. All the dust of the earth turned into insects and pests throughout the land." The magicians tried to produce these with their secret arts, but they couldn't. The land was ruined. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also. Then the Lord said, "A deadly pestilence will fall on your livestock, the horses, the donkeys, the camels, and all the flocks." All of the Egyptians' livestock died, but the heart of the Pharaoh remained hardened. Then the Lord said, "Dust shall cover the land and shall cause festering boils on humans and animals." The magicians could not stand before Moses, for the boils also afflicted the magicians. But Pharaoh would still not listen. The Lord said, "Hail will fall on the whole land, on humans and animals and all the plants of the fields." There was hail with fire, such heavy hail as had never fallen in all the land. The hail struck down everything that was in its path, both human and animal. The hail also struck down the plants of the field and shattered every tree. But when Pharaoh saw that the rain, hail, and thunder had ceased, he hardened his heart. Then the Lord said, "Darkness will fall over the land, a darkness that will be felt." There was dense darkness in all the land for 3 days. People could not see one another and could not move, but still the Pharaoh's heart was hard. Thus says the Lord, "Every firstborn in the land shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, to the firstborn of the slave who is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of the livestock. There will be a loud cry throughout the land, the whole land, a cry that has never been or ever will be again."
After hearing about those many plagues and thinking about how they connect back to the earth, I want you to travel back in time with me to ancient Egypt. See if you can close your eyes right now and go back in time using the time machine of your own imagination, going back thousands and thousands of years back. Picture a vast, scorching desert, the Sahara, with sun-touched sands for miles across northern Africa. Now imagine an unlikely river running through this desert where lush greens and vegetation grow along the river, the banks of the river wet from flooding. This river, the Nile, is the longest river in the world, over 4,000 miles in length. The river flows across Africa into the Mediterranean, where this massive, lush delta takes all of that water and drains it into the sea. Just imagine this lush area where crops grow and the river flows abundantly with this lifeblood of ancient Egypt. Now picture coming up to this river with an unsightly scene. The first thing that strikes you is the smell. The smells of rotting fish and dead animals, their bodies lining the shores of the river. What's even more striking is the color of the water. A crimson red, rather than the muddy, dark blue waters you're used to. A river that's so reliable for all sorts of life has now turned deadly. And you and others who rely upon it don't know what you're going to do. Thank you. Please open your eyes. When reading this account of the first plague in Exodus, some scientists wonder if the waters that were blood red might be from a natural occurrence known as a red tide or a harmful algal bloom. Occurring in nature from time to time, this is a phenomenon where microscopic algae multiply in such great numbers that the water can suddenly turn a bright shade of red. While only a small percentage of algae produce the toxins that can kill fish and other animals, there are some that are deadly that even cause illness and death in human beings as well. This picture up on the screen is actually a photo of Lake Motro in northern Chad during a red algal bloom, a photo of a lake in the same desert as the Nile with a similar ecosystem and climate. And it would not be far-fetched for ancient peoples to encounter this scene and to see a river turned to blood, knowing little about the science of what fully causes it. A harmful algal bloom or red tide would be a harrowing omen. Farmers, fishers, and truly everyone in the region would have cause for concern witnessing this red color and the death and destruction that it brings. And so this Sunday, we're exploring the 10 plagues from Exodus and the Passover story, examining them through the lens of ecology and their connections to the earth. Passover itself is one of the most important holidays for Jewish people. The name itself commemorates how the angel of death passed over the ancient Israelites as they were met with the plagues over Egypt. What I'm struck by in hearing about these plagues is how they all point to some sort of imbalance or disconnection with ecology and the land. Not only are they all earth and ecosystem related, these plagues might also be in chain reaction to one another, something that may blow your mind that you may not be able to unsee again. How one ecological imbalance inevitably leads to another and another until the destruction itself is so widespread that death inevitably follows. I'm wondering if these ecological lessons from the plagues might offer us an interesting vantage point as modern readers in our present world, where so much is ecologically out of balance. With our changing climate and our soul matters theme of interdependence, are there gleanings for us in the Passover story that point us toward interdependence of all of these ecosystems and our own role in changing course so that death might not follow? That's what I welcome us to explore as we think about these plagues today. But before we get too far into the plagues from the story, it's important to notice the many plagues that we witness now in our world today. As Dave mentioned, we have 10 ripe examples of modern plagues facing our earth: deforestation, pollution, overfishing, acid rain. We are faced with other plagues like drought and famine, genocide and violence, plagues that touch places of our world and destroy the environment. Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, Yemen, and way too many others in our world. The most pivotal of these plagues, much like the Nile River turning to blood and affecting everything else, is the plague of climate change. Just like the Nile, all else will flow from this single devastating event. The evidence is overwhelming that our changing climate is distinct from climate changes in our past. This one is inexorably linked to human beings and our burning of fossil fuels, and how this increased production of greenhouse gases is raising our global temperature and putting carbon dioxide into our oceans. These plagues are not something out of myth and fantasy. We see too many plagues today and the devastation they cause to our lives and to the natural world. This plague is the hinge point for everything else, from coastal floods to the dissolution of coral reefs, from the frequency of storms and uncommon weather events, to even the mass extinction of species, maybe including even our own. Going back to the story, after the Nile turned red, all of these other biblical plagues could have been connected to one another. The Nile swarming with frogs is an event that has been noted in multiple times in history, known as the phenomenon of raining frogs, except there's no hallelujah, it's raining frogs for you fans of the Weather Girls. In search of food, these frogs might have swarmed the rivers and lands until they died in heaps, causing the land to stink. They literally fell from the trees. I mean, that's where this raining frogs thing comes from. With all of these frogs dying, the gnats and flies then might go unchecked, with frogs usually eating them and keeping those numbers down. The Hebrew word kinim, referenced in this chapter, might also refer to lice or fleas, which also paved the way then for boils and all sorts of other types of illnesses. The illnesses spread by these insects would not just affect human beings, but also livestock. The final devastating plague in the series, the killing of the firstborn children, might also be explained in this way. The firstborn as the ones to pick the grain, this grain that has been contaminated with toxins from a red algal bloom. These firstborns might have died from the poisoning coming into contact with these. The plagues of hail, locusts, and darkness might be related actually to volcanic activity, especially from volcanoes on the island of Santorini, about 500 miles away from Egypt. Now, 500 miles is quite a bit of distance for these eruptions, and scientists don't know this conclusively, but we do know that a major volcanic eruption occurred 3,500 years ago on Santorini as a possible link for these plagues. And so the hot ash mixing with the thunderstorms above Egypt may have then led to hail with fire, not to mention the total blotting out of the sun, and the rise of locusts due to increased rainfall. Everything on our earth is connected. One thing doesn't just happen in a vacuum, especially with our ecosystems and the natural world. Going deeper into this story, I also want to draw your attention to the characters of both Moses and Pharaoh. Repeatedly, we encounter Moses speaking out to Pharaoh, warning him of the plagues and devastation that is sure to follow. And also, repeatedly, we witness Pharaoh hardening his heart each time, refusing to listen. In this analogy of Moses and Pharaoh, who is playing these parts with our changing climate today? Whose warnings do we hear over and over again that we are truly beyond a point of no return unless we change our course? And likewise, who is it among us and in our society and wider world who still refuses to listen? Who refuses to believe the evidence and the dangerous warning signs that something bad or worse is coming? I imagine our scientists playing the role of Moses, sounding the alarm again and again that something is wrong and out of balance for our planet. I imagine earth justice activists and climate lobbyists urging us to pursue better ways before it is too late. And I also see pharaohs everywhere. Companies and corporations that exploit the earth and the land, politicians and elected leaders who deny the science, who are backed by constituents who also refuse to read the writing on the wall. How tempting it is for us to simply stop and just explain it all away, like the magicians in the story who replicate these plagues and tell Pharaoh that it's all made up until they can't explain it away any longer. These devastating events eventually come for them all, magicians included. An ecological reading of the 10 plagues in Exodus is a warning sign for earth justice today. Our Nile is already turning red. The plagues of today's world are already occurring in chain reaction. Though unlike the traditional story, There won't be a passing over of some while the rest are left to suffer. In the end, we will all feel the pangs of climate change. We now have to decide what role it is that we'll play. Will we be Moses or Pharaoh? Will we warn of the destruction and death to come, or will we only realize it after it's too late? Of course, one of the core lessons at the heart of Passover is the lesson of Dayenu from our time of prayer and meditation, a word in Hebrew that means it would have been enough. In our capitalist world, where we are in an era marked by unfettered consumption and the exploitation of natural resources, capitalism itself has become our government and our religion. We've grown past societal notions of constraint, from the increasing sizes to our soda cups, to also the ballooning salaries for executives on Wall Street. In our world, 85 of the wealthiest people have a total wealth that is equivalent to 3.5 billion of our world's poorest people. 85. The Jewish teaching of Dayenu offers us a different way, a way that teaches us to delight in the best parts of living, to hold gratitude for what one already has. But more than just passive gratitude, Dayenu is also restraint from what is excess or unnecessary. What would Dayenu mean for us in our world today? A world where we no longer leave the decision-making and preservation of our natural world up to companies and corporations, where we restrain ourselves from seeing other human beings as enemies, as a means to an end, and sacrificing everything else just for profit. What might Dayenu mean for our own relationships to a changing climate, and how might this help in changing our course? How we must no longer cater to the powers and systems that no longer or haven't ever really served us in the end. That our gratitude for this planet we call home must also be expressed in our stewardship of it at every level, unless we're open and ready to the consequences of what will come. To close, I remind you of our Time for All Ages story that Chelsea shared about the old man and the carob tree. The wise man asks, "How long will it take for the tree to bear fruit?" "In about 70 years, the old man replies, "this tree will produce carobs good enough for eating." In what seems almost foolish, the old man decides to plant this tree knowing he will not live long enough to enjoy its fruits. Though he knows he must plant this tree, he remembers how he enjoyed the fruits of trees planted long before him by those who likely never saw their fruit. If we're going to make it on this planet, we're going to have a mindset like that of the old man and the carob tree. We cannot give in to our capitalist, materialist sensibilities that tell us to only think of what we can gain in the here and now. We must also think of future generations. We must plant trees and sow seeds for a world that we won't ever know, but that our children and their children after them will delight in for years to come. And if we don't manage to shift our perspective, the cycle will then break, and nobody will be able to enjoy this beautiful planet, let alone its many fruits. So as you leave today, know that not all hope is lost. We still have certain pathways to choose before death and destruction continue any further. We must decide now, will we turn toward this news and change our ways, or will we harden our hearts? As Unitarian Universalists, I'll tell you that we're not ones to look away. The red tide is rising, and so must we. Amen. Let us hold now a moment of stillness. And if you would join in singing our closing hymn, number 1015, I Know I Can. You can find this in your teal hymnals. Please rise in body or in spirit.
If you're following along in the teal hymnal, we are adjusting a couple of the words in the third and fifth verse. Sister is now friends, brother, family. Also, if you have enough room in your brain for this one, I think it would be so yummy if when we get to the I know, I can, if you would allow me to sing I know, and then you echo back to me very heartily, I know, then I'll sing I can, and then you echo to me, I can. I think that'll be so yummy. Let's give it a try, shall we?
Reverend Sarah Eileen Lawal shares with us, seeking that which unites us as we release the flames. Spirit of life and love, in this time of uncertainty, when rhetoric blusters about and words are used as weapons and our nation clenches its fists, may we remember our shared humanity, our universal kinship, our interdependence. As we unclench our fists and breathe together, breathe in love, breathe out peace, may we recognize the flame of the divine inside all of us, even those we're not so sure about.
I just have some quick announcements before we end our service together. Rumor has it that the children in Sunday school have been making some chocolate-covered matzah. So probably not a huge abundance available for you, but if you want to try a little piece or have that, I think they're excited to share that treat with you. So make sure that you go enjoy that in our fellowship time. Also, please stop by the SJA, the Social Justice Action Table, today with your coffee and sign up for their training to meet like-minded neighbors and encourage them to vote their values. There are lots of ways to connect with neighbors, like letter writing, postcards, texting, knocking door to door. So if you want to get involved in our efforts for that, please visit their table. A note also that there's the Bluebirds Thinking Inside the Box viewing that's happening this Wednesday, 7 p.m. This will be after our Wednesday night potluck that we have scheduled. And I think we're also trying to get this thing started with potluck, where we do kind of like a family game night on the fourth Wednesday of the month. We did that last month. So if you're interested in playing some games, come to potluck and then stay for the Bluebirds video. I think it should be a lot of fun. And then lastly, just to note that we have an advanced directives workshop happening April 29th. That's a Monday at 7 p.m. Basically, this is in response to our purchasing of an AED. We want to make sure that we're all educated and well-read on advanced directives and what our own wishes are. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please go see that. And then there's also another date coming up of May 12th that we have available. So if you can't make this one on April 29th, there's another one coming. Would you now please rise and join hands, or as we also practice here, the symbol of please do not touch me, outstretching your hands. I just love always hearing a little chuckle of that out in the congregation. Those of you online are also invited to link up. I'm really loving the enthusiasm. That's great. So in the spirit of covenant, community, and commitment, and in the spirit of justice for our planet Earth, may we be made ready to serve one another and to create the world we so desperately dream of. Pass a little squeeze, an air 5, and go in peace.